Today is Friday, July 25th. We're talking about a 6-hour meeting between one of America's top law enforcement officials and Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, and the public disagreement between President Trump and the chair of the Federal Reserve. Also, bold new diplomatic moves in the face of global anger over the war in Gaza. Plus, how the world is mourning an American wrestling icon, how a new merger shifts the power in media, and how much has changed 35 years after a historic civil rights law went into effect. Those stories and even more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in about 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Lacey Evans, filling in for Erica Mandy today. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Jeffrey Epstein's closest confidant is sitting for an interview with one of the top officials in the Justice Department. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche traveled to meet Ghislaine Maxwell in Florida, where she's serving a 20-year prison sentence for helping Epstein groom and sexually abuse underage girls. This comes as the Trump administration faces ongoing criticism about keeping some of the evidence related to Epstein under wraps. Many critics on both sides of the aisle have suspected the files could implicate other powerful figures in Epstein's crimes, and now they think the government's silence is protecting them. It's not clear what information Maxwell has been able to provide beyond what's already in the public record, but her meeting with the deputy AG is set to continue today. She may also end up speaking before Congress, since this week, a House committee issued a subpoena for her to be deposed, and one lawmaker suggested she testify publicly about what she knows. Stay tuned. The idea of a new ceasefire in Gaza now seems to be even further out of reach. The U.S. pulled out of talks between Israel and terror group Hamas yesterday, saying Hamas isn't negotiating seriously. So far, the militant group hasn't responded to the withdrawal, but Israel brought its negotiating team home too. Earlier ceasefire deals have been short-lived, though they have previously helped release Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. Now, America's top negotiator says the U.S. will be looking at alternative options to bring the rest of the hostages home and bring stability to the people of Gaza, though it's not clear what those alternative options might be. France decided to take a new stance on the conflict this week, becoming the first of the group of 7 major industrialized nations to recognize the state of Palestine. For now, it's a mostly symbolic move, but French President Emmanuel Macron says he'll formally introduce the plan at the UN General Assembly in September. Israel denounced the decision. The Israeli government has been against Palestinian statehood for a while, and now they say it would just reward militants after their terror attack on Israel back in 2023. Here in the U.S., Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed that sentiment, saying France's plan sets back peace. What happens next in Gaza is uncertain, but today, France will join the leaders of Britain and Germany for emergency talks about how to get food to hungry people in Gaza and how to stop the fighting. To be continued. The U.S. is now planning to destroy almost $10 million worth of contraceptives meant to go to poor countries. The Trump administration reportedly denied offers from the UN and reproductive organizations to buy the supplies outright or ship them, and instead, the U.S. State Department is going to burn them at the cost of another $167,000. The supplies set to be incinerated include contraceptive pills and implants to help prevent unwanted pregnancies, but the State Department says it can't support distributing the supplies since they could cause an abortion. Advocates are now criticizing the decision, saying the aid cuts will only lead to a rise in unsafe abortions. This is just the latest shift the U.S. is taking away from providing foreign aid through USAID, which has now been gutted. New federal data out this week shows the fertility rate in the U.S. has dropped to an all-time low. The U.S. once had a rate that made it so each generation had enough children to replace itself, about 2.1 kids per woman. But that rate has been sliding for close to 2 decades now. And the latest data says last year, the average was less than 1.6 kids per woman. That's actually on par with fertility rates in Western European countries, too. And for now, the American birth rate is still outpacing the death rate. Still, the Trump administration has taken steps to address these falling birth rates already. For example, President Trump backed the idea of baby bonuses and issued an executive order meant to expand access and reduce costs of in vitro fertilization. More news still coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor, Trade Coffee.
Who knew cold brew doesn't have to be a whole thing? That actually I can make delicious cold brew coffee to enjoy right at home that honestly tastes way better and costs less than buying it out. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the US for both hot and cold coffee drinkers. And if you've been listening for a while, then you already know I love Trade coffee to use with my espresso machine. But now my fandom is on a whole new level because I've added cold brew into the mix. Perfect for summer. So tasty and refreshing in the mornings, especially with their special cold brew collection. So I'm getting not only the expertly curated equipment to simplify making cold brew, but also the best beans from top roasters specifically for cold brew. So I just scoop it into the pitcher, add water, and then let it sit in the fridge overnight. And that's it. I have smooth and delicious cold brew waiting for me to pour over ice in the morning. And for a limited time, Trade is giving 50% off a month of cold brew. That's around 60 cups of cold brew for 50% off when you go to drinktrade.com/newsworthy. That's drinktrade.com/newsworthy to get 50% off 1 month of cold brew. drinktrade.com/newsworthy.
Now, back to the news. There's more proof the American jobs market is thriving. New data shows the number of Americans filing new unemployment applications fell to a 3-month low, and continuing claims were about the same as the week before. This suggests employers are mostly holding on to their staff. But since the recurring claims haven't gone down, that's a sign companies aren't hiring either, and unemployed workers are having a tough time finding new jobs. All this information is expected to play a big part in the Federal Reserve's policy meeting next week. There, the Fed is expected to once again keep interest rates steady. It was a pretty awkward day at the Federal Reserve. President Trump toured the Fed's headquarters with Fed Chair Jerome Powell to see the major renovation happening. Trump and his administration have criticized the reno project as being over budget. And yesterday, Trump and Powell bickered about the price tag, with Powell saying Trump's numbers were incorrect. Some Fed staff told the AP there are a few reasons why the renovation has become so expensive, like the need for more security, rising material costs and tariffs, and the need to comply with historic preservation measures. Well, the president says interest rates are the main issue anyway, not the renovation. Trump says rates need to go down a lot to speed up economic growth and lower the government's interest payments. But Powell thinks lowering rates would just raise inflation. Trump has floated the idea of firing Powell many times, though whether he can actually do that legally depends on who you ask. The president has called Powell stupid and stubborn, among other things. But yesterday, Trump just said he believed Powell would, quote, do the right thing. Stay tuned. The world is saying goodbye to a man who's widely recognized as the biggest wrestling star of all time. We're talking about Hulk Hogan, who passed away yesterday at 71 years old. Emergency crews were sent to his home after a report of someone in cardiac arrest. They took him to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Hogan was more than a wrestler. He was the entertainment icon behind Hulkamania. He's known for taking wrestling from a low-budget regional attraction into a multi-billion-dollar industry. And his larger-than-life personality made him a household name across generations. Since news broke of his death, fans have been turning up at his businesses in Florida like Hogan's Beach Shop and Hogan's Hangout, leaving flowers and sharing stories. And on social media, fans, fellow wrestlers, and political figures have been paying their respects. Paramount Global has gotten the go-ahead to complete its merger with Skydance Media. The FCC approved the massive $8 billion acquisition. That includes the CBS broadcast network, Paramount Pictures, MTV, Comedy Central, and Nickelodeon. But the companies had to make quite a few concessions first. For starters, Skydance's CEO promised to get rid of all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. He also promised to create a new investigator to handle complaints of bias in news. Plus, President Trump says the network will run $20 million worth of public service announcements consistent with his ideological beliefs. So far, Skydance and Paramount haven't commented on that. Earlier this month, Paramount agreed to pay $16 million to settle a lawsuit over a 60 Minutes interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris. And last week, CBS said it was canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. CBS said the show was ending for financial reasons, but considering how critical Colbert has been of Trump, many people speculated the cancellation was tied to getting this deal closed. The companies are now expected to close the deal in the next few weeks. Tomorrow marks exactly 35 years of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA is the groundbreaking civil rights law that bans discrimination against people with disabilities in all areas of life. It set expectations for accessibility, so schools and workplaces are now required to have things like ramps, elevators, designated parking spots, and curb cuts. And they have to provide other accommodations for people with different disabilities, like those who are blind or deaf. Because of this law, most public buses have lifts for wheelchairs, disabled children can attend school with their non-disabled peers, and employers are generally aware that people with disabilities have civil rights they can't violate. That said, disability advocates say the true fight for equality is far from over, since most affordable housing is still not accessible and many disabled Americans still struggle to find jobs. There are also concerns about pending Medicaid cuts. So today, there will be a push for advocacy on top of celebrations. Cities across the country are marking the 35th anniversary with rallies, parades, and festivals. That's it for the main news today, but now it's time for Feel Good Friday, where we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
While we may have enjoyed summer off from school as kids, us adults don't usually get the same type of break from work. And yet, I'd say we can still take this time to focus on our wellness, because workplace stress is no joke. In fact, one report found 61% of the global workforce has higher than normal levels of stress. Even small steps can help, like sitting in the sun daily, making time to be social, and maybe even trying out therapy. Therapy can help you navigate whatever challenges the workday or really any day might bring. I've definitely benefited from therapy when it comes to being my best self at work, from figuring out what might be holding me back, to how to become more productive in a way that I can still enjoy, to learning how to better manage my nerves ahead of one big event or meeting. And BetterHelp can be a great place to start. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/newsworthy.
Now back to Feel Good Friday. And today we're talking about a teenager in Indiana who has spent the summer giving back to his community. 14-year-old Emmett Kelly has been mowing lawns for free. He is part of a nonprofit called Raising Men Lawn Care that helps disabled veterans, elderly people, and others who aren't able to cut their own yard. Emmett says he wanted to get involved because the community has already done a lot for him, explaining that when his dad died, people helped his mom get presents for him and his brother. And now, Emmett's mom says he's always looking for the next opportunity to help someone. Originally, his goal was to mow 50 lawns this summer, but now Emmett says he doesn't plan on stopping at 50. That despite all the long days and hard work, he's grateful for whatever comes next. Thank you so much for listening today. We'll be back tomorrow with a special edition Saturday episode about what kids of all ages really need during the summer before they go back to school. That'll be in your podcast feed tomorrow morning. Then join us again Monday for your next daily news roundup. For now, thanks again for listening and have a great weekend.